Hello and welcome to the Six Sales podcast. This is Mike Nicholson from Six Sales. Today we're going to be speaking to Karen Stacey, who is the CEO at Digital Cinema Media. Karen, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you, Mike, and
Good.
Thank you for having me today.
Lovely to have you. It's taken us a little while to find a time, and I'm so excited that we finally got to have this conversation. So
on
I
the
appreciate
sunniest
it.
day of the year.
Yeah, sunniest day in the year, and we're in a dark room, but you can't have everything. I'm sure the conversation will be illuminating.
Ha
Boom, boom. Right, so just to kick us off, as is traditional, could you give us a little bit of an overview of your career to date that's led you up to this current role as CEO at DCM?
I can. I had a funny start to my career, which is and for the people that know me know this, which is I didn't go to university. So I left school at 18, and why I was doing my maths A level, because I'm a numbers girl more than a words person. And my mum heard an ad on LBC radio for an assistant in the accounts department. So she rang and pretended she was me and got me an interview. She was a tiger mother before her time, I think, just making sure that I was going to go out and earn a living.
Yeah.
And I got the job. So I started in the accounts department of LBC. And then after probably about 3 months, realised that the sales team were having much more fun. So realised that is the place for me.
Yeah.
Moved to the sales department and and it went from there.
Right.
So I went from there in radio for a little bit. And then I went to Yorkshire TV, and then I went to Channel 4, and then I went to EMAP that became Bauer, and then I'm now at DCM.
Cool. Okay. You've crammed a lot in. If I was to sit here and read half of the awards that you've been given over the years, it will be a really long podcast, and I might lose people. Not that they're not all amazing in their own right, but out of everything that you've done so far, what would you say you're most proud of?
So I think I'm always proud, and I've been lucky to win it twice, is when we've won Commercial Team of the Year at the Media Week Awards. So we won it with EMAP, and then we've won it with DCM. And that sort of you do because everyone's involved. So that is probably the proudest moments. And then when you create a campaign for someone and you know it's different and good. So when I was at EMAP, we created something which was called Go Think Big. And it's 10 years ago now, but we created a portal for people to deliver and request work experiences. And we created literally thousands and thousands of work experiences from across the Bauer portfolio, and then for young people. And in fact, a couple of people I bumped into in the industry got their job because of this work experience we created. And that was with two brilliant colleagues, which was Lily and Betty, who I worked with at Bauer, and Lucy Banks, who's now at TikTok. And we always think about it was something that was well ahead of its time. But that was a creating great campaigns for clients is still the bit that just gives me such a spring in my step when it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think we're similar in that respect. My favourite ever campaign, I've got two, but one of my favourite ever campaigns, I was working at a company called Blink TV that do big screens either side of the stage at concerts. So we're at Wembley Arena. It was a Pink concert. So the audience was made up primarily of women wearing pink because obviously they're at Pink concert. And we ran a Sheila's Wheels ad. But before running the TV advert, and for those that don't know, it's a sing-along with pink ladies dressed in pink in a pink Cadillac, and it's for women's car insurance. And so we had a countdown on the big screens. We had a big bass roll through the speakers, and it came up, "Are you ready?" just in pink letters, and everyone started screaming, "I can't hear you, are you ready?" And then they were screaming louder, and then it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And instead of Pink coming on stage, "For ladies who insure their cars." And I had a video camera on the audience, and they were singing along and laughing.
Brilliant.
Duped, but in a funny way, and I thought, that was brilliant. And unfortunately, that was at the beginning of the ROI days, and the agency went, "Yeah, but what's the ROI?"
Oh, I know.
Oh, man, come on.
I know. We've done that.
Of people singing along to your song.
We've done that when we've made bespoke cinema ads for films before. And you just know we get great engagement anyway, but if it's specific, who said context wasn't important?
Yeah.
Should be taken to one side.
It's massive. So for those that don't know, Digital Cinema Media, or DCM. Can you just give us a brief overview of what you do?
Yeah, so we are a cinema advertising organisation. We are owned by Cineworld and Odeon, and also View are part of our shareholders. And we sell the advertising space before the movies. And there are two players, so it's us and Pearl and Dean. We have about an 80% market share. And so it's important for us that we do things which represent cinema as a whole. And we also work closely with Pearl and Dean because we're a small medium, and the two of us together are going to be stronger. So we have sort of one message that we're talking about, the power of cinema advertising and everything within that.
Yeah. Did you come across anyone that can't see the power of cinema advertising? It's kind of a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it?
It's so, I have to say, I say this a lot, which is I truly believe I've got the best job in town. Honestly, because I've sold a lot of things in my time. I've always been on media owner side, and it's the one medium where I haven't met any client or agency or planner or creative that doesn't love the cinema. So I do feel very lucky that we've got this amazing medium, and it's our job to just talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, the power's so obvious. I was lucky enough to come to your upfronts, and I'd forgotten, I hadn't been to the cinema for a little while. And I'd forgotten that you can actually feel the sound. Like the chair's rumbling, and you're like, oh my goodness, I can actually feel this. Like, it's insane. I think as well with media planners and buyers and clients and everyone really, that we tend to view the world through a sample size of one. And I think cinema for a lot of people will bring back happy childhood memories of maybe going with their parents or their favorite film when they were kids and stuff. And so there's that emotional connection to the cinema as well, right?
Yeah, I think as well, and from a sort of rational point of view. So what I always say to the team is, look, when you're selling stuff, you've got to do you've got to persuade people on two different sectors, which is one, emotional reasons, and secondly, rational reasons. And we know we've got bundles of emotional reasons, and then so we've had to work really hard on the rational reasons. And I think we are the only medium that its core proposition of what it was 40 years ago is getting stronger by the day, not weaker. And I think that's a really interesting, that's what people find sometimes, that, it's hard to get your head around, that you're doing exactly what you did 30 years ago. And the power of that is getting better, not worse.
Right. How do you measure the power of that? When you say the power is getting better, not worse?
So I think from just the basics of audience, so the audiences are still really strong. I know we're going to talk about COVID in a minute, but after the blip of COVID, but we've got strong audiences. We've got content that no one else has got. And so you can only get it in the cinema. It can't be copied. It can't be, unless it's, illegal, but it sort of is just our content. And then that power of attention. Attention was almost quite easy to get, and so was reach. Now reach is really easy to get, attention isn't.
Yeah.
And so our numbers that used to look small for reach, actually, when you layer over with the attention they're getting, are really quite sizable.
Okay. So yeah, you mentioned COVID there, which did its very best to halt the march of cinema. I know we're going back to March 2020, and it might seem weird to some people that we're going to go back that far, but this is such a interesting story, I think, and incredible story, and I think it's worth talking about. So with a lot of media outlets, television, or even outdoor to a certain extent, but maybe not so much outdoor, news media, available inventory went up through COVID because more people were at home, more people were consuming media, they were bored, whereas once the lockdown hit in the UK, your inventory went to zero, right? So you're now the CEO of a company with zero revenue, not a little bit less, or we've been hit a little bit, you have no money. So like, I'm fascinated, and I think this could be a podcast episode, or probably a multi-part podcast series in its own right, in terms of leadership. I don't think that there are a lot of challenges in leadership, but I hope that you won't get a challenge that's as hard as that
Me
again.
too.
So could you maybe talk us through the early days when you weren't sure if lockdown was coming or if it wasn't, and how you perhaps prepared for that, specifically with the people, because I know you're passionate about people, and I can hear when you talk, you're most proud of the things that you're most proud about was a team game. It wasn't anything that you did individually, which I love as well. But do you maybe talk us sort of through the journey of the cinema shutting and the realization that your revenue has just basically dried up and you've got to somehow carry on going?
So I remember it well. It was March the 20th, 2020. And we had a call from the cinemas to say they're going to be closing. Because if you remember, actually, first of all, there was a bit of a nonsense announcement of, we're not telling businesses to close, but don't go out. So, which was a bizarre.
Yeah.
And I remember getting a call from both Cineworld and Odeon to say, we're closing. You need to do what you need to do. Don't run out of money. So one of the rules I live by is you can only control the controllables. So I can't do anything about COVID or the government or the rulings. I can only control my bit. So when I spoke to the owners as well, they also said, this is not going to be short term. So interestingly, the owners of Cineworld at the time are Israeli, and Israel was ahead of us, if you remember, with the impact of COVID. So they already said, this will be July at the earliest, and it could be all year, which obviously at the time I was like, really? And then quickly the opportunity or the government announced the furlough scheme, which was a lifeline for us. And so I thought that we are really not open. We just have to, my job is to conserve as much energy and as money as I could to make sure this business was as healthy as it could be when it reopened. So we made the decision to, of our 76 people, put 66 on furlough from day one. So that was quite a big decision. There was some admin to sort out at the beginning. And then I worked closely with, so the people around me were amazing. So my COO, Paul Maloney, Davina, our sales director, David Hipkiss, our social commercial director, and Gemma, HR. And the five of us spoke every single day. We'd all discuss the decisions we had to make. And then everyone just gave me the back in then to speak to the team. And I think and I'm so glad we did. So we went really quickly to save money and conserve funds. We kept credit control and finance open because it was about getting the money in. And we tried to get as much money in as we could, and then spoke to all our suppliers to say, we can't pay you yet. And then we spoke to the team every single week about what was going on. I'm a real believer, honesty is the best policy. And if you don't know, you don't know. I think people are really good with the truth. And that's my lesson in management too. Just tell them the truth. And it was really hard. A couple of learnings was I was making a lot of fuss on the call of the 10 people that were working because we were just running around trying to think about, all the things we had to do and learning new stuff and speaking to customers. But the people who were on furlough were also doing a lot for the company. And I got a call one day to say, you must be really grateful for everyone that's on furlough, which I did think, oh, why'd you say that? Because that seems, and because they said, because if I could, I would give anything to be working right now. So it was tough for everybody. And so that was a real learning that someone's, just because you're running around or you're feeling really busy, that's not necessarily more valuable from the person who's just waiting to play their part.
Yeah.
So it was tough. And then we had lots of we're on, we're off, we're on. So Tenant launched in the summer, really didn't do a lot of admissions. Then we were told that in October, Bond would be in October of 2020. and we brought everyone back to work on October the 1st. On October the 2nd, I was told it was moving. So we then refurloughed everybody. And then we had to make some tough decisions about redundancies. And the other decision that we made was we kept our senior team. So because my thinking was when we launch, we need to hit the ground running. And senior people can do junior people's work. It doesn't work the other way around.
Yeah.
So we need the people to make the calls, talk to the customers, get out there and do a lot of grunt work but it is better that way round. So although it's harder because you're doing more conversations around redundancy, it was the absolute right thing to do because your senior people in your team will create a bigger difference.
Yeah.
Quickly.
On the revenue front, it occurs to me that on the positive side, perhaps, when you close in March, because agencies have quite long payment terms, there's probably money due to you that's going to be coming in for a little while.
Yeah.
But on the negative side, the uncertainty about the future of, is this going to be July? Is it going to be the end of the year?
Yeah.
Probably meant you weren't being planned for future schedules because people didn't know whether there would be a schedule for you to be planned on, right? So were you finding that it was a double-edged sword of not only are we not earning any money now, but we're not being put on future plans just in case there isn't cinema?
And I guess so March the 20th is when we closed. We reopened May the 17th, 2021. And I remember it clearly when Boris announced his path to opening or, to freedom. And it was the beginning of March. And he went through everything, and we can do this then, and we can do hairdressers in April, and then cinema on May the 17th. And I did think, oh my goodness, that is another 3 months away. What are we, we just got to keep going. The upside that we had is that we knew in October we had Bond. And Bond is like a magic all of its own. So we knew if anybody could get people back to the cinema, it would be 007.
Yeah.
So I think having that big film gave us a huge light at the end of the tunnel. And I think having that focus for everybody, so really because our revenue in May, June, July wasn't brilliant, but that runway up to a big opening in October, and if you're speaking to customers about cinema's back, we need to be on this, it's back with the biggest film, the biggest character, always the biggest films. I think that really, really helped us. Right. So we exited out of 21 in really good shape.
Okay. And then fast forward to 2024 again now. How is UK cinema looking now versus pre-March 2020?
So it's okay. So I think, so if I talk about the audience first, so the audience is steadily increasing. It's not back to 2019 levels yet, but we always have got to remember 2019 was the highest ever admissions in UK ever.
Right.
So I think some of the things that have been put to bed is this whole debate around straight to streaming, because it hasn't worked. And so we've seen studios, what a better way to test it. They tested it when everyone was at home. And the simple maths, which I know Claire Enders has done a lot of work on, is that if a studio puts a film in the cinema, it makes them pounds. When it goes to streaming, it makes them pennies. So
for every audience member.
For every audience member. So the longer you can keep it into cinema, the better. So we believe that we might even see an increase in the theatrical window, which is now at 45 days. So that's what's like just less than 7 weeks. And it used to be sort of 12 to 16. Because, at the end of the day, money talks.
Yeah.
And the studios make more money from a theatrical release than they do straight to streaming. And if you look at the organisations that are straight to streaming, such as Netflix, they have moved away from a premium film offering to series and sport.
Right. So if you took so you said 2019 was a bumper year anyway. It was the biggest year ever. So if you took a 5-year average before 2019 and looked at what that looked like versus today, is it roughly there or
Not quite?
not quite?
Not quite. And I think don't forget we were hit by COVID, and we're hit by supply. Actually, the audiences of the big films are sort of where we think they would be, and very similar to 2019. We've just not got enough product.
Yeah.
So the product is still probably
because all the filming stops, as well as you can't. Not only can you not sell ads, you can't film on set, right?
Yeah, you couldn't film on set, and then we had the actors' strike and the writers' strike. So 25 will be a much better comparison.
Yeah.
Because I described it as it's like we've tiled a room and we've got lots of big tiles and we've got no grouting, and all the grouting is what makes up the numbers.
Yeah.
The last 20%. So we feel really, good about that. And the other, clear example of the films for me is we've got to market what's out there. We've got to tell people, because the extreme success and marvel that was Barbenheimer it's a marketing success.
Yeah.
Barbie was a good film. Oppenheimer was a great Christopher Nolan film, but they did, Barbie did almost as many admissions as Bond.
Right.
That's a marketing success.
Yeah.
In fact, our industry should be really proud.
Do you think we'll see more marketing successes like that? So, do you think the studios are going to learn from that and think, hang on a minute, what did we do right with Barbie? Because I
hope so.
On the face of it, without the marketing, you think, it doesn't seem like the sort of film that I'm going to be that excited about.
Well, it wasn't even in our top 10.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting how there was one photo that was released of Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling on roller skates, and they saw that it went absolutely crazy on socials, and then they picked up on it, and everyone joined. And obviously you had Mattel. I mean, it's a big ad, isn't it, for Mattel? So I really hope that we are going to see the support from the studios and the support from the cinemas as well, to remind people there's never, the best place to see a great film is in the cinema.
Yeah. But you obviously did a phenomenal job leading the business through probably the worst thing that could ever happen to a cinema company. Looking back though, I mean, and as you were doing it, as you're saying, taking day by day, talking to your senior leadership team every day, there was no playbook. No one in media has ever just been completely shut down for a year. So with the power of hindsight, is there anything you look back on and think, I would have done that differently, or we made the right call there? You mentioned that you made the right call with certain redundancies at certain times, but is there anything you thought back and actually, if I'd have known then what I know now, I would have probably done that differently? Or do you think it was as good as it could be?
I think I'm glad we were quite decisive, and I think you learned as you went on. So I think the honesty to the team became more, because I had nothing else but to tell them what was going on.
Yeah.
So I guess you learn from that as time evolves. I mean, as always, could you have been even harder? Could we have? We had some battles with. I mean, I learned so much about business rates and all other stuff that you take for granted, that you sort of just pay. So I had such a frustrating conversation with. So cinemas were let off business rates because they weren't open, and we weren't. That's £250,000 a year to our business. So, and that I play that back in my head as well, because that's a big saving, £250,000 for the year. And Camden Council just wouldn't budge. Just wouldn't budge.
Yeah. It's computer says no, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just sometimes you play back some of those.
Cinema. Yeah.
So I think you play back some of those conversations of, would I've just done that slightly different or gone about that slightly differently? But and again, and it wasn't just me. It was the team, And also to, I'm so grateful to that senior team as well, because if you remember at the time, there was a bit of it was a talent shortage. So a lot of people that left got jobs immediately. So I'm really grateful for the people as well that stayed with DCM, because it's hard not working.
Yeah.
As much as it seems fun, first of all, I know even you working from home, you are working, you are exercising your brain and doing different things. And so I'm really grateful for the people that stayed with us and have continued to stay with us to relaunch the business.
Yeah, I remember I just got a flashback of the horror of homeschooling while trying to work from home. It's horrendous. There's a reason we need teachers and not parents to teach, because
it's a reason it's a profession.
Newfound respect for teachers. So hopefully you've had the biggest challenge in your career. Hopefully that's now behind you. But over the next 12 months as the CEO, what does your roadmap look like? What are the big challenges for you that lie ahead?
So I think that there's no doubt the market's tough. And so as a leader, we need to work out what's our story, if we can offer a silver bullet, what is it? And then think about how we communicate that to the market. As we were talking earlier, there's two parts to when you're talking to customers about why they should use your medium. There's your emotional reasons to believe and your rational reasons to believe. And we're really lucky that, emotionally, I've never worked in a medium that everyone loves so much. And I've worked in radio and TV and magazines and digital, and everyone loves cinema. But when it comes to rational reasons and rationally, why should it be on a schedule? There's a lot of, you had a little bit of incremental reach, and if our ads are really good, and, if it's the right timing, or if the film's really good, we'll think about you. And we've got to get us to be almost an essential on certainly when campaigns are launching with a new brand, they're launching a new message, or they're launching a new campaign. And that's what we are working hard on over this next year. And working in radio for a long time, we always called the radio multiplier. And we don't have a trade body. So we at DCM, with the 80% market share, take it quite seriously about our message.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that before. Yeah. Why is that, do you think?
Because we have the CAA clears copy for us, but we've never had a sort of trade marketing body like a Thinkbox or a Radio Centre or Outsmart or the IAB. So
you guys are kind of the de facto.
We take it on, and being 80%, we are, and we've all got the same films, so we are the market. So we are working hard on, and we're about to launch our positioning, which is what cinema really does is maximise your schedule at the beginning. And when the world is looking at how do you optimize, we think when you think about your target audience and you think about how you get the maximum reach for your 1+ cover, that's where cinema comes in. So rather than thinking of us at the end of the cover curve, think of us right at the beginning, because the difference we make there, especially with young audiences, because 55% of our audience are under 35, that's where we make the most difference.
We were talking before we came on air, weren't we, about the not only launching the campaign, but at the same time launching the creative. And so many video ads in digital that are like with display, you can get a second of attention. It might be enough. It might nudge you to remind you of the brand or whatever. But with video, it's typically a story, and it typically unfolds second by second. So you need some sort of sustained attention, especially with ads like the one we talked about before, the Specsavers ad that's running at the moment, with the man trying to get a big box up, a block of flats, and he gets to the 10th floor and he knocks on the door and he finds out he's in the wrong block of flats. And then the brand should have gone to Specsavers, but it's second 27 of 30. in a lot of digital environments, you would never get to that, right?
Yeah.
So if you're only able with your frequency to reach maybe a couple of seconds of attention on your 30-second ad, or even if you've got a cut down, then there's a couple of things you need to think about. One is maybe get the brand a bit earlier on, but two, make sure that the story is embedded in people's minds before they see that ad, so that they remember, oh, that's just the funny Specsavers ad with the 5,000 miles song. 500 miles song. Yeah,
exactly. And the lot of work we did around attention, where people are watching 48 seconds of our 60-second ad, we absolutely knock it out the park for attention. And I think everyone's got to remember that, our job is to get consumers to watch advertising, to make them do something or change their mind about something. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
Not just about counting the number of people you reached.
Yeah.
Because that's only one measurement.
I think that's another podcast in its own right as well. But I think a lot about the context of the consumer at the point of delivery as well. And I'm sure a lot of the best media planners do the same. But with cinema, you're sat in the dark. You're told to turn your phone off. The start time is advertised, so you get there for the ads. It's kind of a part of the experience with the trailers and all the rest of it. And it's dark, it's loud, it's the biggest. It's no wonder you get 48 seconds of attention, right? And if you're trying to read a news article while on the run and trying to get on a train, then of course you're going to pay less attention. But other media are available. I'm not picking on news in particular, but you get my point. So I think that when you think about the context of the consumer in the cinema environment, not only are they probably happy, relaxed, excited, they're paying attention because it's everything else that's a distraction is taken away, even the mobile phone, which is probably the biggest distraction these days.
And I do say to a lot of people, I think that it's almost like it's the time for cinema. Like if you were launching cinema advertising tomorrow, and you're saying to this crazy world where we're trying to get a cut through and reach attention, and young people don't like or listen to ads or view ads anymore, I think people will be clambering over cinema. And sometimes you've got to think in that way, because our core proposition of it's a dark room, people are looking forward, they're playing content, that they're paid to be there, they see the ads as part of the experience. It's just getting stronger, not weaker.
Yeah.
But sometimes we are obsessed with the shiny new thing rather than...
And being able to do reach and frequency all in the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. So, Wackle. So you're currently Vice President, soon to be President of Wackle. Just celebrated last year, I think, his 100th birthday, which I didn't know till fairly recently. So that's a long time to be around, a long time in media, isn't it? So could you tell us, for those that are not aware, what Wackle is and what your role is at Wackle, please?
So Wackle stands for Women in Advertising Communication London, and it started 100 years ago because there were some advertisers, men and women coming across from the States, and the people that were entertaining the male colleagues from the States realised that there was no sort of women's organisation to entertain the women from America. So this organisation, Wackle, was set up, and it was there to look after the female advertisers from the United States. And that's where it started off as Women in Advertising Communication London, because it was a London basis. Or I was telling my daughter about the story the other day, and she said, actually, it doesn't sound since these women were entertaining these ladies from America, women actually can lunch, which I quite like.
Yeah.
And then it's evolved. It's evolved over the years. I mean, it's pretty incredible that it's 100 years old. It's evolved over the years, and it probably about 10 years ago, it probably moved itself from being just a small club who really supported each other and more probably of a dining club to a club with a purpose. It was led by the brilliant Kerry Glazer at the time, who just said, look, I think we need to have a purpose. So there's some brilliant women that have worked in detail on this. So I feel like I'm just carrying on the baton from this work that was done. And it was, we are there to help accelerate gender equality. That's the purpose of the group.
Right.
And we would really have got a big lofty goal for ourselves, which is we'd love to see 50% of women in CEO positions or leadership positions by 2045.
Do you know what the number is now?
About 30.
Right.
So, and we do three things. So the club so it's got three pillars. So the first one is around support. So we are there to support the members of WACL. We are there to support them as sort of team members, I guess. And we do lots of things around support. So we hold from fun things like dinners and galas and have guest speakers, and to we have a membership experience committee that makes sure that people are just touching base. We have a good communication funnel from our own Facebook and Instagram, etc. We do things like WACL Wisdom. We do a lot of work for, so I started a program called what I've called CEO 101, which is we talk about we want to be a CEO, what all the basics you need to be a CEO, and do you want to be one?
The next step below that.
What should be expected of you? We do a lot of work around NEDs because some of the senior women then go on to want a portfolio career. So we've got a brilliant member called Francesca Escari, and she does a lot of workshops on this is what you should expect. And then our second pillar is inspire. So it's all about, so our support is about, let's make sure our women at the top stay at the top. And sometimes they're in, majority male organisations. So we are there to be a gang around those women. The next pillar is inspire, where we are about inspiring the next generation. And we do a lot for the next generation, which is we hold a talent festival where we get speakers in, and it's aimed at young women with sort of about 5 years experience. We do a lot of mentoring. So there's about 100 WACLers that mentor younger women. We do, and then we do a big bursary, which is called the Talent Awards. And people can apply to go on a scheme, like a training scheme, and we will fund up to £1,500 of the training scheme. You've got to put in some money yourself to show you're committed, and the training scheme's got to be around our industry because we want good women to stay in our industry. Yeah. And we give about 25 of those a year out.
Okay. How's WACL funded? Through the members? Are you paid to be a membership? Yeah.
Through the members, and then sponsorships.
At a company level or on an individual level?
Both.
Right.
And then the final one is we campaign. And we campaign around, we believe that through work and evidence, that there are 5 levers that you've got to really think about when you're helping women get to the top. And those 5 levers are be a women's health hero, because women's health is just complicated. So let's make sure there's you understand all the things that go on with women. Flexibility, and obviously, actually, I guess the big upside of COVID is that we've all realised that flexibility can drive companies rather than hold them back. So around flexibility.
There are a lot of people entering the workforce now that won't even entertain a job that isn't flexible, right?
Yeah.
Where it used to be 9 to 5 in the office, presenteeism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we know.
There's always a silver lining to these things.
Exactly. Yeah. So we know flexibility is really important. We know promoting for potential is really important. Women are notorious at not probably be putting themselves forward for stuff if they don't think they're qualified for it. So we're asking our allies, etc., to think about that when they're promoting people. We think about, and then another one, we call it work like the world's watching. And what we say is we are in the business that portrays women in advertising in the world. Let's make sure it's portraying them in the right way. So let's think about what all our audiences out there. And then the final one, what we want to do is then work with allies, because our whole thing is we can't do this alone. We're only half the population. And actually, it's the men that are going to make this happen, not just the women. And we've got to just talk about one thing. So if we're talking about getting women into leadership and these 5 levers, which is all backed up by evidence, then let's make sure that we just, campaign on those 5 things. Well, otherwise people would get a bit confused about what do you stand for now.
Right. Okay. There's a whole bunch I could talk to you about there as well, but running out of time, and I know you've got another meeting, so I want to make sure you get away on time. So just on that, obviously we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and we spend a lot of time supporting execs on LinkedIn, and we kind of keep an eye on where the thought leadership's coming from. Now, if we want 50% of women to be in CEO roles or senior leadership roles, and we want it to be, there to be an equality across men and women, then for me, it feels like we should be hearing from more women in public forums like LinkedIn. But whenever we do this study, which is interesting, because you said there's about 30% CEOs are women at the moment, about 30% of the thought leadership is from women as well. I know, I'm sure that's just a coincidence, but that's typically, every time we do the study, we look, it's usually 70% of thought leadership is from men, and 30% is for women. Now, nothing wrong with men. I am one, great, that it's normally very good stuff. But what can be done by WACL or anyone else, or just through the industry to encourage more women to speak publicly about what they know and what they think and what they feel, the challenges, because if you don't see it, it's not there, right? So one of your challenges, one of your levers is women's health. Now, if you're a single man and you don't live with a woman and you're not, too clued in on that, then it's like another language to you, perhaps, so being more open and talking. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I think I know what I'm trying to say, but I'm not doing a very good job of it. But how do we have these conversations publicly and more often? And if there's a challenge in our industry, how do we encourage women to talk about that challenge? But you don't have to have all the answers, but to talk about it publicly is part of the process, I think.
So the final lever is the language of leadership,
right,
which really plays into this. So the language of leadership is changing. And I think that we are going from very much a command and control kind of language to a more inclusive kind of language. And I think that the danger with supporting, thinking how I say this, you don't want anyone to feel there's a winner and a loser. And I think that we're seeing some frightening data, which is something like, and of a younger generation, which is we've gone too far. Women have got enough now. And it's clearly not the case because, someone told me the other day, there's certain industries like the estate agents where at Knight Frank, there's more men on the ball called Rupert than women.
Wow. What a stat.
So I think that we need to, so we are trying to do something in WACL, which is we've got a bank of women that have volunteered to be speakers. And I think you're right. I think we've got to think that if I get asked to speak and I can't, then who am I volunteering?
Right.
And I think that's a duty for both of us. So the question should be, okay, who can you put forward? And WACL's got the most amazing women. It's like 390 amazing women that could probably speak on most subjects. And then I think the other training is around, if women do well in work, business does well. It's a proven fact. So everyone should want women to do well. And it shouldn't be, I'm not doing well at the cost of someone else. So I think there's some training, and there's one of the WACLers I work with is called Laurie Meakin. And she runs training for almost how do men manage these women? How do you get the best out of them? Because again, you want to manage in the right way. Now, there's a little bit of me that makes me laugh because it's like, I don't know how to behave. It's like you would with a bloke you've never met.
Mm.
Just shake their hand. Just be really polite and don't be inappropriate with your language. This is not difficult.
Yeah.
But I just think we just need to make it a win-win kind of language. Because otherwise I think we're going to get some pushback on, it's gone too far.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think there's a million other avenues that we could go down, but it's time for you to go to your next meeting, sadly. So I'm going to have to say goodbye. Karen, thank you so much for your time. Been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And thanks for being on the podcast.
And can I just say one thing?
Of course. About
Six Cells, is I just want to thank you and Karen publicly, because since I've been working with you and since the work you've been doing with me on LinkedIn has changed, I think, certainly the amount of work that I would have done and communicated. And I remember you saying a really clear fact, which was people read people, not companies. And I just want to say that insight is just so right. So I just want to say thank you to you guys.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. Checks in the post. Thank you, Karen. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you.